What is grace? You see, some of you probably have heard this definition before, that grace is an unmerited favor. Have you heard that before? Someone has said that God's grace is unearned favor or undeserved favor. So if you're making notes, you may like to write these words down. Unmerited, unearned, undeserved. That's what grace is. Unmerited means it's not something that you receive based on your merits. You don't receive God's grace based on your merits. It's unmerited. Unearned means you do not earn God's grace. God's grace cannot be earned. Undeserved, which means we don't deserve God's grace. Keep in mind, God's grace is unmerited, unearned, undeserved. That's what grace is. God relates to us based not on our merit, not because we deserve, but because of His goodness and His generosity. The Bible says that we are sinners. We actually deserve God's judgment and punishment. But God, in His goodness and generosity, gave us what we do not deserve. It's unmerited. It's unearned. It's undeserved. Therefore, grace is receiving what we do not deserve. Receiving what we do not deserve. You do not deserve God's grace, nor do I deserve God's grace. Grace is not something that we earn. It has been given to us freely, unmerited, unearned, undeserved. Because God is love, grace flows out of His love. God doesn't owe us anything. God doesn't owe us any grace. God does not have to share His grace with us. In fact, as I've said to you before, what we deserve is God's judgment and punishment. We don't deserve His grace. Grace is also something that we do not earn. Grace is unearned. Do you know what? If you are able, please listen, if you are able to earn grace, are you listening? It is no longer grace. If you deserve God's grace, it's no longer grace. If you think you can earn God's grace, it's no longer grace. It becomes a wage. Then you are earning. But God's grace is unmerited, undeserved favor. And once we realize what God's grace is, we cannot stop but thank Him.